Just like Matt LaFleur said for his team, we can't afford a victory Monday. We can't take the day off. So we were out there grinding tape. I wanted to see, was what this team did offensively and defensively replicable? I'm going to tell you what was and what might not be moving forward here. Plus, one player that has caught my attention the last few weeks who is playing at an extremely high level, who could be the key to his side of the ball, playing with a little bit more consistency. All of that is on Locked On Packers, and it starts right now.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 back in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I went back and watched the tape of Sunday's game. Of course, it was Sunday's game. Why would I go back and watch the tape of a different game? We're not prepping yet for the Steelers. And one of the things that I wanted to see was, I always want to check my instant reactions. Okay, was what I saw during the game actually what was happening? Do I still believe what I believed post-game? And there are a lot of cases. We go, oh, I thought such and such a player played poorly, and then you go back and you watch the tape and you go, it actually wasn't as bad as I thought. And what often happens is the reverse is true. You thought someone played well, you went back and you watched the tape and you go, okay, there were 3 or 4 plays here that were really not great, Bob. So offensively, we talked post-game about the identity that they started to show. And my goodness, it was even so much better when you're not bogged down by the vicissitudes of a game. And you're not thinking the highs and lows of those moments and the momentum of your own emotion, whether the players feel that, I think each person can decide if they think that that's real or not. But it is so much easier to go back in a more, kind of sterile setting and go, okay, what were they really doing? And the scheme stuff, it was even so much better than I realized in real time. They used every kind of motion you could think of, and it all had a purpose. They used pre-snap alignments to their advantage. They mixed personnel. They wanted the Rams in base. So they're playing 21. They're playing 12. And the reason they wanted the Rams in base is because those linebackers can't move. And because when they're in base, they're going to play too high. So the Packers can use that sort of information to their advantage. And then they called and executed plays that work zone or man. So on the first 3rd down, it's 3rd and 6. They get an opportunity. I wrote about some of this for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. They call a man beater. We talked about this with Travis last week. You have an opportunity to, on 3rd down, attack them in man coverage because they're going to play more man coverage on 3rd down, early downs. They like to sit in that 2 shell. They like to play zone underneath, quarters, disguise the cover 3, all that stuff. And then they got the exotic blitz looks that they can fire up. They're going to play a little bit more aggressively, a little bit more man coverage. And they dialed up a man beater. Very first 3rd down. This could have been, like with Denver, the Packers come out and they run on the first 2 drives out of 11 personnel thinking they're going to get nickel and they get base. Well, the Packers come out and they think they're going to get man. They run a man beater, but because they have Dontavian Wicks coming in motion, he is running fast enough that the linebacker just can't run with him in drop. And so Jordan Love fires it out to him. The offensive stuff was even better than I realized. And you watch the tape and you go, man, they've been moving the ball up and down the field. Now, the Rams don't have a great defense, but they've played worse defenses this year. And they've played worse against worse defenses. The Raiders and the Broncos come to mind. They didn't let Aaron Donald dominate this game. In fact, they got some pretty good reps from both John Runyon Jr. and Sean Ryan against Aaron Donald in this game. Some good reps from Josh Myers and Elton Jenkins in this game. And even their left tackles, because they played two, even got some good reps. Aaron Donald has not been as dominant this year, but it still is pretty impressive. When you get Aaron Jones involved, it unlocks so much more for you as a team. And what it does, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later with a player that I've had my eye on who is really starting to play at a level that the Packers need him to offensively. But when you can move Aaron Jones around, they lined him up in the slot, they lined him up wide, they lined up as the wing, they lined him up in split gun, they sent him in motion pre-snap. They used him in the screen game. They used him, they threw the little push pass to him. He can be the engine for your offense, and then you let Jordan Love do the rest. This was the version, as I said after the game, the identity of the offense that I thought we were going to see. And if they're going to, it seems like Matt LaFleur trusts them now to run this stuff. They started off the season with a lot of interesting things, some schemed up stuff. And then it felt like in the middle there, at least the middle part of what they've played so far, they were missing so many assignments that Matt LaFleur felt like he had to condense the playbook. If it were me, I'd go, you know what? These concepts work. Even if you just bat, like 75, 80%, which is a terrible percentage in the NFL in terms of like not busting your route. Not missing an assignment. Be cool. Then, it's fine. But it seems like he trusts them now. And with the exception of, a couple early penalties, Rashawn Gary not lined up in the right place. The first both John Runyon Jr. calls were nonsense. But on the second one, and Matt LaFleur said this yesterday at his press conference, like, just line up in the right place. Please, line up in the right place. And I think that this is a cleaner game for them. They executed in the run. This is the best run blocking I've seen them have maybe since 2021. It was really well blocked in the run game, and the results bore that out. Plus, you have Jaden Reed. You get the special. That's what you want. That's what this offense was supposed to be while the passing game got going a little bit. And then guess what? It's not a coincidence that in their best running game of the season, they got their best Jordan Love performance of the season. He had an adjusted completion percentage, so accounting for drops and throwaways and those kinds of things. 88%. For all of the complaints about completion percentage that he's had, and it's still below 60% on the season. One game is not going to change that. It's not a coincidence that it was much better in the game where they could actually run the ball and they could actually run their offense. And it's not just the dump offs. He was, I believe, 6 of 8 on throws over 10 yards, including a couple just absolute dimes. Romeo Doubs on the comeback, dart. Dontavian Wicks on the deep out sidearm sling, dart. Romeo Doubs again on a comeback on third down, dart. And then you throw a little touch. Luke Musgrave on the corner route. Just can't, I think it might have been a cross country, might have been a deep over, but either way, linebacker couldn't run with him. And the Christian Watson play, I went back and watched it a couple different times. I think Christian misplayed the ball. I think he thought it was going to come up short because the first one did. And so he turns and backpedals and ends up having to leap. Whereas if he just keeps running, he might just run right underneath it. And actually it works out better because I don't think he would have made the play, interestingly. Like, I think this was the best opportunity he had to make the play given where the defensive back was coming from. Either way, a little bit more touch on that throw. This is a version of the offense that works. And the Rams do not have as good a defense as, say, the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Kansas City Chiefs. But the Packers don't face that many great defenses down the stretch. They can get this offense moving the way that they played. Now, defensively is a bigger question, and I think there were reasons to be skeptical, but I also have some reasons that you have to be really excited about what this defense is putting together. We're going to talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at PrizePick. PrizePick is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It is preposterously easy. And I would say, not that it's more fun, but you have more opportunities with basketball now here, because now there's games every night. And so you can put together LeBron James with, for example, Travis Kelce, and put them together. LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a 10.5 of 3-pointers made and receptions. You can do that. Like, that's pretty cool. That is really, now we're having fun. Now we're getting crazy. PrizePick even offers a reboot policy so that your entry stays in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you've got a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second half, that player is rebooted. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for that first deposit match up to $100. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. I hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Football season is here, and Locked On is kicking up our coverage with Locked On NFL Kickoff Live. Each Friday, Locked On will go live at 2 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On NFL YouTube channel. Host Tanitra Batiste, Jarvis Davis, and Kyle Crabb will break down every game on the NFL slate to get you ready for your team's matchup, your fantasy lineups, your betting angles, and more. Plus, get the in-depth local analysis from our stable of NFL hosts across the country who know these teams better than anyone else. That's me and my friends. Find Locked On NFL Kickoff Live every Friday at 2 p.m. East on Locked On NFL's YouTube channel and any Locked On NFL YouTube channel. Defensively, the easy thing to say is, well, it was a backup quarterback, Brett Rypien. On the other hand, Brett Rypien in Denver won games with his team in 2 different NFL seasons. He's not some rookie who just showed up. He's not Aiden O'Connell playing with an interim head coach. He's not Josh Dobbs who just showed up that day in the building. It's not like they don't have talent, Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. It's not like they don't have a head coach who makes the quarterback's job easier. To put together this sort of defensive performance was really nice. It was really nice. There wasn't just a bunch of throws sprayed. Here's, though, what I think is perhaps more important. The run game. The run game. They bottled the Vikings' run game. Yes, they lost. Yes, they gave up 24 points. Part of that was the turnover in their own territory, gave up the touchdown. That was a huge play in the game. Otherwise, for the most part, defense played, especially against the run, winning up front. They won up front against Minnesota. They won this game in the trenches. And even without Kenny Clark for a half, Rashawn Gary, Carl Brooks, Lucas Van Ness, Kobe Wooden, Devontae Wyatt, this front, Preston Smith, just keeps coming at you in waves. This was Kingsley Enagbare had a couple really great plays. This was the first game in a little while where you felt that talent that we talked about early in the season, and we saw it in week 1. So why didn't we see it in some of these other games? I think there were some reasons for that. I think you're just going to expect rookies. You're relying on a lot of really young players. And so you're just going to have to live with some of those inconsistencies. Lucas Van Ness has 5 pressures in week 1, and I think he had 5 total in the next 6 weeks. That's just going to happen. Carl Brooks, though, consistently shows up. Kobe Wooden makes a play every game. Devontae Wyatt is one of the most productive pressure percentage pass rushers on the interior in the NFL this season. And Rashawn Gary is a superstar. Add in now that you have Devondre Campbell back. He made some nice plays in this game. And Isaiah McDuffie, what can you say about this guy? He played spectacular football in this game. Multiple tackles for loss, flying around. He looks like he could be a starter. Like it could just be McDuffie and Walker next year right now. Or maybe you play with those three together. Maybe they run a 4-3 next year. Who knows? You could play with those three together. I think no problem. That is pretty nice to have. And Carrington Valentine, spectacular. Like playing against Cooper Kupp, playing against Puka Nacua, gave no quarter to those guys. Like it wasn't like Brett Rippon was just missing throws and guys were open with Valentine in coverage. No. Playing with intensity, playing with swagger. It's going to be inconsistent. Courtland Sutton got him in Denver. But for a game to see, you want a rookie to show these sorts of highs, to show this type of ability. If they're inconsistent and they just never get to that high level, like we saw with Eric Stokes as a rookie, he wasn't, first of all, that inconsistent really. But there were games where he played awesome. And there were some games when he lost the ball in the air a couple times or whatever. But then there were games where he was just absolutely everywhere. And they kept throwing at him and he didn't give up anything. And you go, man, that's what you want to see. I have an issue. And it's part of the Joe Barry problem, but this is a Packer staff problem now. There's just no reason Anthony Johnson Jr. should not have been getting opportunities before this. He was a healthy scratch multiple times already this season. This is a guy who was getting first team reps late in training camp. I think it was just a couple days, but still. A guy was getting first team reps and then was a healthy scratch for the regular season when you don't have a room full of safeties that you can count on. Like, I thought Jonathan Owens made some nice plays in this game, but why exactly? In a year where you don't really care about winning games the same way that you would normally, why is Anthony Johnson Jr. not getting opportunities? We found out after the game his name is Ant. He goes by Ant, or at least Matt LaFleur calls him Ant, which is information I needed sooner. Terrific nickname. Why were you not trying some more 3 safety looks with him on the field? I don't get it. And here's the problem. This is also true of Sean Ryan. I don't why was Royce Newman starting over Sean Ryan? Sean Ryan immediately came in the game and played like he was the best offensive lineman on the field. That's not really an exaggeration. Moving bodies in the run game, played like 2 series worth of snaps. And it's like, how can you keep doing this? This coaching staff, and we just can't take for granted that they know who should be out there. And that's a scary thing to say, but that's true. They've screwed this up, especially with offensive line, too many times. But it was the same last year. Just throw Devontae Wyatt out there. Dean Lowry is giving you nothing. Give Wyatt a chance to play. So in a season where you're trying to play the young guys, I don't understand giving the opportunity to someone like Owens, who, look, again, he played well in this game. So it's hard for me to go too ballistic about it. This is more of a macro point. I just was really high on Anthony Johnson Jr. in the pre-draft process. Was very excited about the pick for him. He made some plays in preseason and then got no opportunities at a position where they're totally bereft of talent. This is just a trend for Matt LaFleur and his staff, offensively and defensively. And so if you're going to be dubious of them putting together, a run here, they got 1 touchdown on a trick play, basically a special, not a trick play. I'm being uncharitable there. But the other touchdown drive was like 7 straight runs behind Sean Ryan, who did not play the rest of the game. Tell me how that makes sense. So it just, that's the part of this that I think is a little worrying moving forward, regardless of what happens the rest of the season, is they have shown an inability to accurately assess their own talent, despite the fact, and this is the weird part, despite the fact that they are consistently developing good young players, especially at the offensive line. Like, they developed Yosh Nijman and then made multiple mistakes in big games on when to play him versus when not to play him. Like Josh Nijman should have played in that 49ers playoff game in 2021 instead of trying to shuffle around guys and play Dennis Kelly and Billy Turner out of position. It should have been Nijman. It just should have been. We were saying that in real time, not a Monday morning quarterback. In real time, we were saying that was what it should have been. And they made a similar mistake in the 2020 NFC Championship game. I harp on this because it matters. They played Lane Taylor over Elgton Jenkins when it was clear Elgton Jenkins was a better player. They played Jake Hansen and Royce Newman out of position in a year where Zach Tom becomes, by week 18, your preferred starter at right tackle, basically, because you bench Josh Nijman after you have to flip his position. They coached up Josh Nijman to be a capable NFL starter. They coached up Rasheed Walker to be, I don't know if he's a capable NFL starter, preferred starter at this point, but he's certainly an NFL player. They got him in the 7th round. Zach Tom looks like a plus NFL starter. They got him on day 3. John Runyon Jr., starting caliber player. They got him on day 3. Elgton Jenkins, a 2nd round pick. They turned him into he was really good, but they coached him up. He becomes an all-pro caliber player, certainly pre-ACL. So they've developed a lot of these players. And yet, in some of these moments, they've been really bad at deciding that those guys should be on the field. Like Allen Lazard should have been playing more. When he finally got his opportunity, guess what happened? We saw it. And so that's one of those things where you're going, okay, if we can't trust this coaching staff to always have the best guys on the field, then you have to start being a little worried about the ability to replicate what we're seeing right now with this team. That is a genuine concern. But don't downgrade the defensive performance because of the quarterback. Don't do it. Like, understand, it would have looked different with Matthew Stafford. So in that way, like, understand the context, but don't say it doesn't matter. It absolutely matters. And then offensively, this can be who they are. This can be who they are against good teams and bad. Your identity is your identity. And this is the version of the team we thought we were going to see, with the varied personnel looks, the heavy personnel looks, being able to do a slew of things in the run game, inside, outside, pre-snap motion, play action, all that stuff. This was the first time it's looked the way that we thought it was going to look in the 2023 season. And if that means Matt LaFleur trusts these guys to do it, and they feel like they have the guys to block it up, then they can do it. All right, I want to talk about a player who has caught my attention, who I've criticized at times this season, and who finally looks like himself. We're going to talk about our pal AJ Dillon coming up here in just a second on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets back with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Right now, the Packers, underdogs in Pittsburgh, 3.5-point underdogs. Whether you bet it now or you bet it closer to game time, you're probably going to get some juicy underdog money line odds, which means it's a good time to make your bet. Would be a good time to bet on Green Bay. I like them in this spot. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options that include spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. I hit a tease, little 6-point tease. The Ravens. No, I was going to use the Ravens. I used the Saints, who are getting like 8, I think, and 8.5 maybe, to beat the Bears. That down to 2.5. Bumped that Bills lineup. I got it at 8, I think. And so they won by 6. I was very much glad that they got the 2-point conversion to make that a 6-point game. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day, everydayers. Tomorrow on the show, our pal Lily Zhao. We've got our crossover Thursday and then an interview coming on Friday. All part of Locked On Packers, your team every day. I want to shout out AJ Dillon. And I think there are a couple reasons why he looks different now. One is context. when you can use him as a complementary piece, I think this idea that, oh, you have to give him 20 carries and that's the only way he can get going. No, we've seen him be a really good complementary player in 2020, in 2021, in 2022. He was a terrific complementary piece, 10 carries, 12 carries. But you can't do the things with A.J. Dillon that you can do with Aaron Jones. You just can't. So we talked in the open about where they put Aaron Jones, pre-snap motion, all that stuff. Now they actually sent A.J. Dillon in jet motion to be a lead blocker on a toss play, a really cool concept. Loved that. There's going to be a play coming off that, I'm sure. One of the great things about putting so many of these weird concepts on tape is now they've got a counter that a team is going to go, we've got this, and you come back. And by the way, this is a great week to do it. An aggressive Steelers defense. They're going to think that they've got this thing scouted, and then you're going to come back and you're going to throw throwbacks, and you're going to run leak, and you're going to do all kinds of stuff to get this team off their kilter. But you can't put A.J. Dillon in the slot as a wing, motion him, and throw him a little push pass and get him going laterally and expect him to go make guys miss. It's not what he does. You can't put A.J. Dillon next to like Jaden Reed in the backfield or Isaiah Wilson in the backfield, run him on that swing motion and run the RPO that they've been running basically since Dillon was a rookie, where you can give on the inside zone or throw him that little swing route. Now they could be doing some of the things. They did it with Jaden Reed and A.J. Dillon. They did it with Jaden Reed and Aaron Jones. I'd like to see them do it more with A.J. Dillon and someone like Jaden Reed. But that makes it easier for A.J. Dillon to just be him. Just run the inside zone runs. Just be you. And I think that makes it easier. There's also a part of this where, and I was talking to Simon Clancy, who covers the NFL over in the UK. And what I said was, the last 2 years, he started a little slowly. And then, by around this time, he looks like himself. And it started a little earlier last year. But this has been now 2 or 3 weeks where A.J. Dillon looks like A.J. Dillon. And I think genuinely one of the reasons is he comes in too good of shape, too rocked up, like too swole. Like I think there is such a thing for him as just like too big. And it's not bad weight. Like the guy looks like a bodybuilder. But it slows him down. He loses that burst in acceleration. And during the season, it's too much of a grind. You can't maintain that muscle mass the same sort of way. So you lose a little bit of that muscle mass, but with it, a little bit more pliability, a little bit more juice, a little bit more flexibility. And now you're playing. And there's also, and this is critical, confidence. Confidence. These guys are human. They hear when we're going, A.J. Dillon doesn't look the same, does he? They hear that stuff. Every professional athlete acts like they do not pay attention to what's being said, and then somehow they can recite chapter and verse exactly what's being said about them. Hey, I didn't hear when that guy said that I do, but whatever. Like whatever the specific thing is, like the very specific criticism. No, I didn't hear him say that. Like bring it up out of the blue. Like obviously you heard it. So he's playing well now. I wanted, because trying to be fair on the show, I was very critical of the way that he started the season, critical of his usage at times. Aaron Jones being on the field just makes it so much easier to use A.J. Dillon the way that you can use A.J. Dillon, the way that you should use A.J. Dillon. And now that we're seeing him only be put in situations where he is at his best, guess what he's done? He has been a very productive, very useful player on this team, taking the responsibilities as like almost the fullback on some of these lead blocks. There are a couple plays where he ends up as the lead blocker. This is now a couple weeks in a row that they've done that as well. That's not exactly a glamorous position to be in, but he's taken that responsibility. And a lot of these guys, Christian Watson, same thing. Christian Watson blocked his ass off in this game. Even, again, another one of those on rewatch where you go back and you go, man, this is even better. Like live, you noticed, but then on rewatch, you're like, dang, Christian Watson digging out defensive ends and safeties and linebackers to spring runs. Like, that's not what you expect. But he did it. So, wanted to shout that out. And that's just another reason. Like, those guys, your best players playing their best, playing in the roles where they are best fit, that also makes your offense a little bit more, and your defense, of course, a little bit more repeatable. Let's do that. The Porky Pig style. Repeatable. Replicable was what I wanted to say, but could not quite get my brain to get my mouth to move in the right ways. We'll be back tomorrow when I'll try it again. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to come hang out with us on our YouTube page live after a game, like we will be this weekend after the Steelers game, come subscribe to us on YouTube so you can stay Locked On Packers.